What's up, heroes, and welcome to episode 96 of the Producer Life podcast. Today we're going to be taking a look at Vital. It is an amazing spectral warping wavetable synth that is absolutely free. Now, wavetables aren't new. They really work by being a 3D oscillator. So instead of using your 2D shapes like saws, squares, and sine waves, they use a 3D shape where you can move around your position on that shape to create new and interesting sound variations. Vital's been around for about 2 years, and I've just started playing around with it in the last month or so, but I am totally impressed. It is a really intuitive interface. It works great, has tremendous capabilities, and obviously has direct comparisons to some of the other big wavetable synths out there like Serum, Pigments, Spire, and of course Native Instruments' Massive X. Did I mention it is absolutely free? There are some paid options, which we'll talk about later on and what that brings to the table. But if you want to download it right now and give it a shot, there is no cost whatsoever. So that's what we're going to be focusing on in this episode. But before we jump in, cue the intro music.
This is the Producer Life podcast with your host, the House Ninja. Bringing you actionable ideas to improve your music and get it heard.
All right, so if you're like me, one of the first things you do with a new synth is you want to scroll through some of the presets and see what it sounds like. And I'm going to click through some of the presets here that come with the free version just to give you a sense of what this synth sounds like. In order to give you a better feeling for it, I'm going to use some preset MIDI files from Nico Katulis's Ultimate MIDI Pack. You've probably heard some of his ads on YouTube. He does do amazing work. I got to say, this MIDI pack has really impressed me. I am not getting any sort of affiliate money from Nico, but it was well worth the purchase. So you should definitely check out Nico's MIDI packs. And I'll, of course, include a link in the show notes. So without any further ado, here we go. We're going to listen to a couple of examples of what Vital sounds like. Just to keep the loops from getting too boring, I am going to throw in a little bit of percussion in the background. All right, so hopefully that gave you guys a good sense of some of the possible sound combinations you can make with this amazing synthesizer. But let's talk about some of the key features. First of all, it is a pretty darn efficient synth. You know, we've all used some of those synths and some of those plugins that your computer just grinds to a halt as you start adding more and more iterations of it. This one seems to run pretty well. I did start to see my CPU usage spike after I added a bunch of these to different tracks. I discovered that if you go into the advanced menu and change the oversampling down to 1x, that can really help a lot. Some of the other things that this synthesizer supports, it supports microtonal files. So microtonal scales are just different ways of dividing up the 12-note scales, frequently used in non-Western countries. But there are specific file types that you can use, .tun, .scl, .kbd, and those files can set you up for microtonal scales. I haven't played around a lot with that, but it sounds pretty cool, and it's awesome that the synth supports it. If you're interested in using this synth for live performances, one of the other awesome things is that it does support MPE. That is a new protocol that came out in 2018. It's really a building progression on the old MIDI control interface. MPE actually stands for MIDI Polyphonic Expression. And Ableton, most DAWs these days, and a lot of MIDI instruments will support MPE. What it allows you to do with digital instruments is to give them more expressiveness and to allow them to behave more like an acoustic instrument. So it allows you to control parameters like timbre, pitch, and amplitude, but instead of applying those to the entire track itself, you can apply it to individual notes. So you have cool things like the Rolly C-board, for example, where if you drag your fingers across the keys while you're playing them, it creates additional expressiveness. So this synth does fully support that. One of the other cool things that this supports are key-tracked LFOs. And what that means is your LFOs, your low-frequency oscillators that you can use to manipulate other parameters rhythmically, can be tied to a particular key. So if you want that oscillator to operate more faster or slower, it can be tied to whether you're playing a lower or higher note. In terms of overall capabilities, it has 3 wavetable oscillators, 3 envelopes, 4 LFOs, 2 different randomness generators. The bottom line is there is plenty of stuff here for sound design. It is an amazingly capable synthesizer. And of course, it does have these standard effects available, your choruses, your delays, your reverb. We'll take a look at those in a minute. One of the things that I found about this is visually appealing. It gives you a lot of graphical information. So as you're watching it, you can see what's going on. And it is very intuitive. Everything is drag and drop. If you want to map an LFO to a function, you can drag it over before you release your left mouse key. It'll give you a preview of what it's going to sound like. So if you decide you don't want to do that, you just drag the LFO off the screen. Okay, so what I'd like to do here is I'm going to kind of walk you through the interface. Now, obviously, it's a little hard because you can't see it, but I do fully encourage you to download it and give it a shot yourself. But let me just talk to you about some of the things that you have available to you. So when you open up the interface, you've got 3 different oscillators that are available to you along the left-hand side. And these are wavetable oscillators. So, for example, with the initial preset, it sounds basically like this. So there's your initial preset. Now, the interesting thing is you've got a whole bunch of different wavetable choices, both 2D and 3D. Changing the wavetable makes a big difference in the sound. And you can also adjust pitch, panning, level, etc. There's a lot of opportunities here. Now, you can throw in a second or third oscillator, and you can, of course, tune those up or down. So we can come in here and we can transpose the second oscillator down 12 semitones, and you get something like this. A little bit richer sound. And one of the biggest ways you can make a difference in your sound is by adding some unison, and that's very easy to do here. So we can add additional voices. Obviously, we can keep adding a few more. We've got one more oscillator to play with, but one of the things that I want to show you is that there is also a sort of a noise generator oscillator. And you've got choices of white noise, grinders, HVAC units, jackhammers, but these are basically effects that you can add in to give a more organic feel to your synth sounds. So for example, if we throw a jackhammer sound into this as well, just adds a little bit of crunch and grunge. Let's try something else. Let's try maybe the river. Yeah, I kind of like that. That's a little more subtle. Now, once you're done sort of generating that raw sound, you can look at envelopes. Envelopes are ways to control the way a sound comes out over time. So you've got attack, delay, decay, sustain, and release. And you can control all of this in here with knobs, or you can control it just by dragging points around a little graph. So with the sound that we were kind of building here a second ago, if we make the attack much faster and sustain much shorter, you can hear you wind up with a more almost plucky sound. So you can really shift the way that your sounds progress over time using these ADSR envelopes: attack, decay, sustain, and release. All right, we've also got 4 different choices of LFOs, and LFOs are ways of rhythmically modulating other parameters, and it is so easy to do in here because you can simply drag an icon from the screen onto another parameter. So one of the coolest things to modulate are probably filters. We do have 2 different filters here, so let's turn on one of our filters right now. And right now, this filter is only affecting oscillator 1, although we could tell it to affect oscillator 2. I think I'll do that just to make it a little more obvious what we're doing. And so we've got sounds like this, but you can kind of hear that filter sweep. Let me make the resonance a little higher so you can hear it even better. All right, that's pretty neat. But if we make the sustain longer on this note, and then we take one of the LFOs and map it to where the filter is opening and closing, we can wind up with much more interesting effects. And almost anything in here is mappable to those LFOs. So there are huge opportunities here for lots of experimentation. And of course, we've come to expect that from most modern synthesizers. But it is very easy and very intuitive to use here. A couple of the other things that are on the home screen that are nice to know about: there are random modules, which allow you to add some randomness to your sounds. There's also MPE controls. So if you want to come up with your own sounds and you want to determine how much velocity of your keystrokes, for example, impacts a particular aspect of the sound, you can do that right from the home page. Of course, you can change the glide, so how much a note progresses gradually from one note to the next. You might have, if we make the glide really big. So at the top of the screen, you'll also see there are basically 4 different tabs. You've got voice, which is the home screen. That's where we are right now. You've also got effects. And as I mentioned, this thing has everything you would come to expect: chorus, compressors, delays, distortions, EQs, filters, flangers, phasers, and reverb. So if we throw a few of those onto our things, let's try a chorus, a delay, and maybe a flanger. Let's see what this sounds like. So this gives you a basic idea of what it can do. Again, the interface is gorgeous, very easy to use. One of the other good places to start, of course, beginning with presets is a good place and starting to manipulate existing presets. But on this in particular, there is a tab that says Matrix. And what that allows you to do is it gives you basically a table which shows you which different sources are being manipulated at any given time by an LFO. So if you've got a particularly complicated synth patch, if you go straight to the matrix, it'll give you a quick shortcut where it shows you exactly what's going on underneath the hood. So this can be a really good place to start. It also allows you to directly manipulate amounts. So if you decide, I don't like how much that LFO is adjusting the filter opening and closing, you can either do that from the original voice screen, or you can go over to the matrix and you can adjust it there too. The matrix is just a little easier to read because it's kind of a table layout. There's also an advanced tab. It has some additional graphical displays. It's got the ability to really dial in your unison effects, etc. And one of the last things I'll mention that's really cool that I have not had as much chance to play around with as I'd like. There is a synth patch in here called text to speech. And so the cool thing about this, so you can kind of hear what that sounds like, but what's neat about it is that there are different language presets in here. So it allows you, if you right click in the screen for text to wavetable, you can actually type your own phrases and it will generate computer generated speech and it will vocode it. And then of course you've got a lot of different options to add unison, for example. I'm really impressed with it. What's also neat is that it's got different language presets, and if you change the language setting, it will actually give you an accent in English. So if you type English into it, but you try, for example, Italian or Japanese, it gives a digitized foreign language accent, which I've never seen before, but it's fun to play with. Unfortunately, one of the limitations, about the only limitation I've found with the free version, is that you only get to do 5 text to wavetables per day, and I'm already out of mine because I was playing around with it earlier. So I can't let you hear what that sounds like today. But definitely download it and give it a shot for yourself. If you pay for the full version, then you get unlimited text to wavetable. I should also mention you can drag in wavetables from any other synth. So you could browse to your Serum, for example, wavetables, and you can point Vital to that folder, and you can use Serum's wavetables in here. Similarly, there's lots of places online where you can get high quality wavetables, and you can either drag and drop those into your oscillators, or you can map a folder and have those available to you as well. So overall, I am totally impressed with the synthesizer. I am going to really enjoy playing around with it more. The couple of little things that are a little frustrating, there is a little bit of delay when you're changing patches. It's certainly nowhere as bad as Ableton is when you're changing between instruments in Ableton Live, but it's not as quick as some of the other soft synth I've seen where you can just rapid fire toggle through different presets and there's practically no delay. So that's a little bit frustrating, but it's really not bad. The other thing that I was kind of surprised about, I use Synth a lot. I know that's an older synth, but one of the things I love, a lot of the instruments have built-in arpeggiators, and there's actually a effect where you can arpeggiate directly from within the synth, which is fun. There is no arpeggiator that I've found within Vital. Now, obviously, that's not a big showstopper because you can just throw an arpeggiator from Ableton or whichever DAW you're using before the synth patch, but it was just something I noticed that was missing. The other thing that I wish it had, and I don't see it on a lot of synths, is a better way to categorize your various presets. One of my favorite systems was in the early version of Massive, where you had not only the name of the preset, but you also had the type. So it might have keys, for example, and then it would have a subtype option, so electric organs, and then it might have a mode for processed or arpeggiated or whatever. But it made it very quick to be able to filter through by selecting various categories of sounds to find exactly what you were looking for. I haven't seen any other synth do that. This one is nice because it does give you the type of sound. So you'll have like keys, saws, etc., lead instruments, bass. And it does give a nice comment box, which many of the authors of these presets are using to kind of describe their sound a little bit. But it's not as useful as the old Massive functionality was. So I did mention the cost. It is absolutely free, but one of the nice things, they do offer a couple of different pricing options. They offer basically, if you want the full version of the program, you can either pay $80 all at once and be done with it, or you can do $5 a month, and it gives you an additional $5 credit in their store towards other sounds, and it gives you access to all of the functionality, or most of the functionality of the tool. It also gives a whole lot more presets. I think it's 400 presets if you purchase the full version. There is a intermediate tier for $25, which gives a bunch more presets as well, just not as much as the top tier version. Free, it comes with 75 presets, which is not a big deal because there's a bunch of different sites out there where people have created other presets you can download for free. If you look at the cost of other wavetable oscillators like Serum, where you're looking at $190 or $10 a month on Splice, this is really a steal, and it is an amazingly competent, effective, powerful synthesizer. So definitely go check it out. You can find it over on vital.audio, vital.audio. And I appreciate you guys listening. I'll have links for tutorials, downloads, free presets, and a bunch of free wavetables to kind of get you started with Vital over in the show notes. So head over to producerlifepodcast.com and look for episode 96. Make sure while you're there, don't forget to check out my new track, Arigato, which is out everywhere. I will also have a link for that on the show notes page. So until next time, this is the House Ninja, reminding you to be somebody's hero today.